So I wanted to ask you some questions about Robert the investor, right?
Okay.
So what type of investor are you and what informs your investing strategy?
We have a set of frameworks. There's a number of frameworks. So when we're investing, I told you the first rule is invest in what you understand. So again, Warren Buffett would say there are errors of commission and errors of omission. We don't mind being guilty of errors of omission. I missed NVIDIA. I wasn't a shareholder. I'm not a shareholder in NVIDIA, and not because people didn't recommend it to me, but I didn't do it. So guilty of the error of omission. I didn't understand NVIDIA. I don't understand chip makers. Want to try not to be guilty of the error of commission and avoid that by investing what you understand. The second piece is we look for two frameworks. One is preconditions for investing. So I mentioned that we walk around looking for problems. So the three preconditions are: we want to invest. I want to invest where there's a perception reality gap. Because if there's a good reality and a negative perception, then if I pay the price based on the perception. When the perception catches up to the reality, I make all that upside. And so I want to go look around for where there's a perception reality gap where, and Jamaica, the reason we're down here investing is we keep saying the perception of Jamaica is sun, sand, and sea. It's not the mecca of investing. You know, people say, "Oh, go to Dubai, the financial center, or something," but saying, no. If you actually come and you're on the ground in Jamaica, you'll see all the business opportunities. You'll see the wealth creation opportunities that exist here, and the perception is not as good as the reality. Even the crime reporting and the advisories for tourism and things like that, they're completely inconsistent with reality. So we look around for perception reality gap. Second is inefficiency. I'm looking around for something that says, oh, you know what? They have an inefficiency, and when they fix it, boy, their stock price is going to go through the roof. So I'm looking around for inefficiencies. And the third precondition looking for is things that are not everybody is buying. And that's probably, worked against me on NVIDIA because everybody was buying. But we'll tend to go where there's a dearth of equity capital, saying wherever equity is in short supply, the prices will be better. But not only that, the company that receives it treats it better. Case in point, NCB. We recognize, having gone through the last number of years and then not paying dividends and losing the confidence, the answer is, you know what? Capital and shareholders' capital is not something to take for granted. And therefore, we need to treat it better. We need to pay it a dividend. We need to do this because we cannot take shareholder capital for granted. And yet shareholder capital is the lifeline of the financial services industry. Without shareholder capital, there is no financial services industry. So it's the lifeline, it's the oxygen that's necessary. And then when you're not rewarding it, you've taken it for granted. So the three preconditions we're looking for, saying, I want to invest where whoever receives my money will treat it like, thank you so much for giving me that money, and let me make sure that I reward you back. Where they have an inefficiency that they can fix and therefore create better returns, and where there's a perception reality gap. So that's one of the big investment philosophies that we subscribe to. The other one, really quickly, is PPP. So predict, plan, and persevere. And so sometimes this applies a little bit more to private investing than public shares, because the main point being is you can have a great idea and execute it terribly, and it will not be a good investment. It was still a great idea, but it was executed. When you can predict that says, oh, I think this is, I have a high degree of confidence. Sometimes we'll say demographics. I have a high degree of confidence that everybody that's 30 years old today will be 31 years old tomorrow. And if I can figure out what 31-year-olds do tomorrow, then I know that all the 30-year-olds I should buy that and sell it to them tomorrow. So predict what's coming. You can see things like climate change, and you can see things like the growth in cancer, the growth in diabetes. These are things that are just inevitably going to grow with aging populations. So it's not hard to predict those things. Then you have to make a plan for how do I capitalize on it? How do I not capitalize in a bad way, but capitalize in a good way, capitalize by serving it. And then third, make it happen. Because the persevere part is sometimes you have to create the market. And if you look at somebody like Elon Musk or something like that, you can have a vision of where electric cars are going. You can have a plan, but then you actually have to persevere, and you have to make sure you get all the charging stations out there. You have to create the industry in order to sell your products into the industry. And so we look for businesses that have the ability to create the market, that have the ability to actually create the market that they're telling the world is coming. And so when you look at certain companies, Apple and a few others, they create the world that people don't necessarily see today, but they have the power, they have the platform and the perseverance to do that.
Okay. I like that. So then I'm inclined to ask you what's in your portfolio. So you don't have to say companies, but you can maybe give me sectors that maybe you see those opportunities that you mentioned. It can
Sure.
be local, overseas. So I know you said Almeida is not there. So
yeah, no, I mean, I manage I still have a portfolio that I manage of publicly listed companies. So I'll share with you the largest holdings in them. Good news is the top names are what they now call the Magnificent Seven. So at least 4 of them. So I don't have Nvidia, so I missed that out of the Magnificent Seven. But got Apple and Amazon and Meta and Microsoft and Google. Those would be in there because again, we're looking at a business that is a strong business, right? We use it. I mean, one of the things when I say you invest in a business, you understand. For the longest time, I didn't invest in Meta because I wasn't a Facebook user. And then as you see that you look at your children and they're on Instagram all the time, then you just say, okay, well, I may not be a Facebook user, but everyone else is, and you can see how they use it. So those are in there. I mentioned, so those are just great companies in long-term growth industries, very good cash flow. The kind of things that you would say there's good, solid companies with big moats, very hard for somebody to come into their space. Then I look and on the financial side, JP Morgan, MasterCard, again, electronic payments, MasterCard. You really have a choice of 2, MasterCard or Visa. Why MasterCard? Because actually, quite frankly, because MasterCard's more active in Latin America and the Caribbean, and I get to see more of what MasterCard's doing than I see what Visa's doing. So that's a reason why I feel I got a little bit more information intensity of what MasterCard's doing. There's a company called Brookfield, and Brookfield, we believe that asset management, wealth management is probably the best industry in the world, and Brookfield's just does a masterful job of asset management in infrastructure, in real estate, in so many different ways. They're masterful in the asset management space. Brookfield is great. And then the companies, interestingly, it's a North American portfolio, but I invested in the North American companies that are present in the Caribbean. So as an example, one is Parkland Fuels. One of the companies that got sold into Parkland was actually a company that's near Portland in Canada, near our office. The Hogarth family sold their business, but Parkland is the company that bought Sol Petroleum in the region and bought GB Group's petroleum businesses down here. So Parkland. So when Parkland went way down during the COVID pandemic, as you can imagine, because planes weren't coming here to be refueled, right? Because there was no tourism. You kind of looked and said, tourism is going to come back, and when tourism comes back, Parkland's going to have a big rebound. And so that's an example of, and there's a few others, Liberty Latin America, which is Flow. So I tend to buy the companies where I can see what's happening in their market back to understand. But so there's a portfolio of blue chips, what I'll call today's blue chips. And then there's a portfolio of companies that I think the perception is not as good as the reality, because I live in the reality of the Caribbean.
Okay, cool. That's very interesting, right? And I'm sure you know Meta recently announced that they're gonna start paying dividends. I know that they did great for the stock as well. It's not something we speak about a lot on our channel, but I am planning to start covering the international market soon. I think more Jamaicans need to see that possibility and take advantage for some of the same reasons that.
Jermaine, I sorry to interrupt you, but I just got to go on the PPP thing. Predict, plan, persevere. So here's two things that sectors. Now, in terms of picking the companies, I'm going to allow you to think about. But if you were two sectors that it would be hard to refute that they're going to grow dramatically, and one we've actually spent a lot of time talking about today. We talked about fraud, cybersecurity. Now, Palo Alto yesterday dropped a lot. I think it dropped 20-some% yesterday. And it's one of the security companies, cybersecurity companies. Now, I haven't studied Palo Alto, so I didn't go and invest in it either. So I haven't studied it. But it's a sector that all of us know is going to grow because we're all being attacked and we need the tools to protect us. And so there are a number of cybersecurity companies. And so one of the things in my portfolio, because I'm still studying it and I'm still learning it, they're very small investments, but I've got 3 cybersecurity investments. And one's in identity management, one's in endpoint protection, and one's the entire cloud management. And I'm just trying to learn my way in that cybersecurity space, but I just believe cybersecurity obviously is going to go on. If I can end up investing in the NVIDIA of cybersecurity, it's going to go through the roof. And similarly, the other side is precision medicine. So all the things that allow us to do more DNA testing to identify early and prevent diseases and fix diseases like the coronavirus. The ability to come up with a vaccine required DNA analysis in a very, very short period of time to turn it into a pharmaceutical product. And so kind of like gold mining and saying, well, can I invest in the companies that sell the excavating equipment? I don't know what the right pharmaceutical is going to be, but there are some DNA type companies that enable diagnostics. So I have small investments in those 2 areas. I've got the P part, the predict, the plan, and the persevere I'm still working on.
Okay, that's awesome though. Thank you so much for that. That gives me a lot to think about as well as I try to, I guess, craft my own portfolio for myself and our family.